You are not for everyone, and that's okay. That's a simple truth, we'll call it, that I've picked up over the years, and it's had a pretty profound impact in not only how I look at the world, but how I view myself as I navigate the world, right? It's particularly useful when you've lost faith in the path you're walking. You've sort of forgotten your power. And I want to share with you a pretty cool reminder of this very thing. A couple days ago, I was having lunch with a friend, very charismatic guy. For the sake of this little story, we'll just call him Friend. And he's telling me about someone that he's now working with in his business. We'll call that person John. And my friend says to me, Eddie, I am learning so much from John. He's adding so much value to what I do, I can't even describe it. But he's loud. And he's controversial. And he rubs some people the wrong way. And not everyone loves John, right? So I'm sort of connecting the dots as he's saying this. I'm like, okay, clearly John pisses a lot of people off, right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. I'm putting two and two together here. But my friend goes, but he's exceptional at what he does. Maybe the best in his lane. And so I don't care, because John's not for everybody, but he doesn't have to be. And you might hear that and initially think, yeah, okay, where's the value, right? Some jerk is helping your friend at work. Well, to me, it felt bigger than that. It felt like fate was screaming that ever-important reminder to focus more on extreme authenticity than trying to reverse engineer what other people might say or think. It's like, stop trying to manufacture their reaction, because when you're you, the reaction is out of your control and not your problem. Love John or hate John, he is 1000% John. And because of that, he'll find his people. Because of that, he won't dull himself down or dim his light. Because of that, John is free. Quick dive into my mind. I certainly have areas of my life, let's say particularly with my brand and my content creation, where I can be bolder, where I can take more risks. Everyone's got their personal arena. That feels like mine, right? That's absolutely unequivocally true. I'd be lying if I said my brain doesn't try to reverse engineer stories and topics that will have an impact. Like, I understand what works, and I roughly stay within that framework. That, in and of itself, can be restricting. Never reckless. But I don't know, maybe there are places I should be or could be more reckless. That's what makes this journey so fun. You are your own experiment. You're always learning about yourself. You're always growing. And the more ought-tos you shed, the closer you get to your power. And by the way, I know not everyone here has a business or brand or posts on YouTube or Instagram. Wonderful, right? Those are just a few examples of many, right? This applies across the board. Because I do wonder whether we all have parts of ourselves that we dull down. And that's the question, right? Are there pieces of ourselves that we don't share because 1/3 or 1/2 or hell, 3/4 of the people we meet will say, nope, not for me? Are there things you want to talk about, hobbies you want to try, places you want to go, art waiting to be made, stories waiting to be told that are ultimately never brought to life because we'd rather be half of ourselves for a majority of the crowd than be all of ourselves for the right minority of the crowd? It's a button that I'm always pressing. I guess because I see and I've seen firsthand how much talent lays dormant. People I know, people close to me, old friends, acquaintances. There's just so much there, so much in the tank, so much canvas left blank. So maybe, just maybe, this is finding you at that perfect moment. Or at the very least, prompting the thought, acting as a little reminder that you weren't put here to be for everyone. You weren't put here to be for anyone. You're here to be you. Not a little bit you, but as much you as you can possibly give to the world. You're here to continuously uncover what your authenticity is, and with each step, attract those who belong in your orbit. It's like not only do you get to live a life on your terms, but you get to do so with those who value what you're bringing to the world. He's not for everyone. Thank God. That's how you know he's really making a difference. Simple truth. You don't need to get it right the first time. You don't. You don't even need to be close. You just can't do nothing. You need to convince your feet to start moving. You need to generate momentum for some type of outcome. Because what that data, what that outcome will tell you is yes, keep doing more of that thing, or no, reel it in and try something different. But either way, progress is reliant upon that information. Going equals solutions. Staying equals hoping, wishing, lost opportunity. Every journey is a long, winding road. It's comprised of wrong turns and dead ends. There will be maintenance required, issues to be resolved, and narratives to be rewritten. None of which, by the way, is beyond you, so long as you take these things as they arrive, one by one. You open up your world to allow them in. And you might look at where you want to be and think, that's a lot, right? That's a world away. No. It's a few tiny decisions away, repeated daily. There's a Greek proverb that suggests beginning is half the battle. Why? Well, because convincing yourself you're capable is not easy. Trusting yourself completely hurts. But it's not until we come around and greenlight the process, it's not until we give ourselves permission that life begins. How beautiful is the fact that we don't have to have all the answers. Not even close. We just need enough courage to step out into the storm, to brave the wind and the rain. I frequently allude to this transformation, right? The first time I spoke in front of an audience, I was terrified. The first few times, actually. Then after showing up, getting reps in, and reflecting, I realized, okay, I've earned a bit of confidence here. I continue to go, to speak, more reps. Okay, now we're getting comfortable with this. I'm not up all night the night before, rehearsing, pacing in hotel rooms. I had a little more trust in my ability. I continue, more reps. Okay, now I kind of enjoy this. I've broken through. More reps. Now there's enough comfortability where I can look at what's in front of me and start asking, well, now, how do I refine this to stand out? How do I make this so valuable that it becomes the 1% of the 1% of the 1%? I've worked hard for my baseline. I feel good. Now, how do I chisel away the little elements of mediocrity sprinkled in there? How do I pull them out one piece at a time? It is a testament to going, to allowing yourself to experience life and data points and ups and downs, all that help you refine the process. They are the journey. Can you do all that overnight? No, absolutely not. But you can always meet yourself where you are and win that battle. You can always become a little bit stronger, setting the stage for the next level and the next and the next. In fact, when you're in it, it feels so intuitive that you don't even realize what you're doing, one battle at a time. You're just stepping on the stone in front of you. Think about it, you don't defeat a storm. You simply navigate through each gust of wind and every drop of rain. You pick apart and outlast the pieces that make up the storm, and you are capable of that. You're made for that. Again, when you give yourself permission to enter the arena that is adversity, that is the unknown, success is oddly intuitive. It just kind of appears in front of you one obstacle at a time, or one opportunity at a time, depending on how you're looking at it. The problem is that too many of us stay on the sidelines. I think you know this, right? And when you wrap your mind around the fact that stagnation is the only adversary, you become free. You unlock what you could be and always should have been. I mean, how brilliant the mind, that incomprehensible network behind your eyes, capable of both putting a man into orbit and navigating the depths of the vast oceans that surround us. It is, in and of itself, a miracle. But what if I was audacious enough to suggest temporarily taking that miracle, that masterpiece, that network behind your eyes, and shutting it off? For a moment, hitting pause on the defense mechanisms actively painting what-ifs and worst-case scenarios, begging you to play small and seemingly always prioritizing safety over meaning. What if I made the case that the best thing you could possibly do is start now and ask questions later? Begin the journey, start the ride, immerse yourself in the river's current. And sure, you don't know where you'll end up, but it won't be where you currently stand. And that new you contains wisdom. It contains that accrued data to improve upon. It contains the 2.0. And so the key now and forever is not to expect all the answers before you step foot out the door. It's not to be sure everything will fall into place. It's simply to have the courage to move into the great unknown without any reassurances. It's you, your belief in yourself, and variables unknown. You don't have to get it right the first time. You just can't do nothing. You're not here just to get by, to check a box. No, you're here for something different. Maybe it's your desire to chase down that sunrise while the rest of the world sleeps, to embrace the difficult, the inconvenient, in exchange for that little bit of glory you'll soon feel as you pour your morning coffee and start your day. Or maybe it's your fascination with the fact that every time you ask yourself if there's more, if you have anything left,
the answer always seems to be yes. And maybe that's it. That what you're capable of, in a world of finitude and constraint and limitation, seems to be the only thing with absolutely no bounds. The human soul undergoes a sort of transformation, if you will, every time we look around at what currently is and decide it will soon be the gateway to something more. And that's life's best kept secret, the word decide. The idea that we choose whether to accept things as they are or to change them. That we have within us the ability to push further than we've ever pushed. To find what was once only existent in our imaginations. And this will always be true. You get what you seek, what you're willing to endure. And while some see this trade-off as too much, as a cost far too expensive, others see it as the chance of a lifetime. The opportunity to give some of you so that you can grow and improve all of you. See, each footstep is far more than a point on the earth. It's a declaration, a commitment to give more than most would give so that you can feel what only a few will feel. So remember that when things seem trivial, when it's easier to call it a day or turn it around, that the simple act of continuing forward puts you in the minority. It's positioning you to experience life as it should be lived. You're here to both cherish the now and cash it in. Let the value of your courage compound. Let your resilience remind you just how much control you have and how much is waiting for you. If only you say yes when it hurts, move forward when the path is unclear, believe when the possibility only exists in your head. You're here because while it may be easier to watch life go by from the cheap seats, the risk, the sacrifice is worth being able to look back someday down the road and know that at least you had the courage to play the game.
Comparison is the thief of joy. We've all heard it before, and it's true. Sometimes. It seems like there's always a sometimes, or an asterisk, or a gray area. Comparison can be an incredible tool in simply reminding you that you're playing small. Maybe way too small. So from time to time, I'll use comparison to help me paint that picture, to create that outlook. Quick example. So on the shelves behind me and on my Audible library on my phone, there's a ton of books and biographies about the founding fathers and other notable American presidents. Why? Well, because they lived lives of such courage. They lived with such conviction. They just lived differently than we live today. And it forces me to ask the tough questions. It's like, well, why? What makes up for that difference in magnitude? I mean, was it simply the times? Were they a product of their moment in history? Were they more determined? Did they have more self-belief? Right? Where is this delta that I'm seeing when I look at their reality versus mine? You read Hamilton's biography, who's not a president, but you get the point. And my toughest battles seem to contain the same level of intensity and weight as his decision to swat a fly. Right? So I'm going to run through 3 bullets that sort of frame my thinking. It's going to seem like I'm unnecessarily beating myself up here, but the point comes full circle, so bear with me. 1, Washington. Everyone knows, right? Led an army initially practically destined for defeat. his execution and death was almost assured. And then I'm like, okay, I led myself to the gym today. Adams crosses the Atlantic 4 times for his country. At the time, that just brought unfathomable risk, and he does it with a smile. Me, I'm procrastinating about making a phone call. Jefferson, drafting a declaration that claimed independence from the strongest, most powerful empire on earth. Me, I get butterflies before going live on Instagram. We are not the same. Why? Well, I guess first and foremost, let's make sure we're asking the right questions. Who says you or I don't have the potential to be a Washington, an Adams, or a Jefferson? It's not productive to downplay our own battles, right? However small. After all, that's how empires are built, a stacking of small wins. No one just arrives in a position of influence, right? And these folks surely had their own battles. That's all subjective anyway, but the comparison here is sacred to me because there is a common theme amongst all of them. And it's not hidden. You don't have to read between the lines to see it. It's self-belief, right? All of these people were in an environment where change was warranted, and all of them believed they themselves could be levers to help shift that status quo. It's like for no reason, the buck stopped with them. And you see that from childhood on. It suggests that if you believe you can be great, and I do, and by the way, so should you, then understand that it's not possessing of courage that is the issue. The issue is that you're merely holding what amounts to a bucket of it. When the true depth of your courage reaches miles and miles down beneath the surface, there is so much more. So much that is incomprehensible. The problem, Eddie, is you can't hit targets you don't aim for. If you don't stretch, there will be no growth. If you aim for a moderately sized mountaintop, that's where you'll land. You'll get a view, sure, better than the ground you stand on now, but nowhere near the view available to you had you merely thought bigger. Thought of yourself as that lever that could implement change. If your giant victory is making a phone call you were dreading, well, then that's the type of courage that will define you. I think in a perfect world, these aren't destinations, they are pit stops. They are tolls that we must pay along the way. You're capable of way bigger. Life begins when you know that. And see, I don't associate this idea as coming from a place of lack. I just think this game of life is beautiful because the journey is endless. This is a choose your own ending story. And sometimes what I need is to look around and realize I'm simply not thinking big enough. The great men and women of history that paved the way for us, they didn't stay connected to these micro problems. They moved beyond them on their way to more. They dealt with life and death. They dealt with seemingly insurmountable odds, simply in the name of their beliefs and ideals. Easy wasn't a choice, not for them. It's why their faces comprise the bookshelf behind me. Now, does everyone want or need that type of personal ascent, growth in the face of adversity? That's for you to look in the mirror and decide. But you're here, so I'm going to assume you do, and if you do, it's critical to know that 1, that type of result demands more of you, and 2, you have more. Comparison isn't always about inadequacy. Sometimes it holds that mirror to your face. Sometimes it reminds you what mankind can produce with courage introduced into the formula. You just need to be reminded that you're looking at the jar right now from inside the jar. Expand your thinking. See there's more, right? Roger Bannister, probably my favorite example, first one to break the 4-minute mile. Prior to that, it was not possible. Humans didn't do it, couldn't do it, wasn't reality. Everyone, quote unquote, knew that. Then Bannister does his thing. breaks it. Suddenly, whoa, it's possible. Now it's real, it's tangible. Runners around the world adjusting their targets. They demand it of themselves. Rapid fire, globally, runner after runner starts breaking that mark. Why? Well, people didn't get more talented overnight. They always had it in them. They just finally allowed themselves to be as good as they were capable of being. And that thing you're fighting, that you're dealing with, it's not nothing. In fact, the battle you're navigating is everything, and I commend you for pushing through it. But take this idea and let it be a part of the arsenal you own and possess as you navigate life's storms. The challenge of today is ultimately small compared to what the best of you is capable of overcoming. What's now the ceiling will be the floor tomorrow. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Hamilton, they were not gods. They were principled men driven by a purpose bigger than themselves. The scope of their belief in what's possible was monumental. And so, to maintain proportionality, they too grew to be momentous, to fill the shoes of self-created expectation. Sometimes the best thing you can remind yourself is how big the world is, how much you can shape and bend your reality, how powerful you are. You're not a quiet observer, but a builder of this world. Then risking execution makes more sense. Smiling at the prospect of death at sea becomes reasonable. Giving the metaphorical middle finger to the king of the most powerful empire on earth becomes a little easier to understand. It's like, I get it now. The world is malleable, and they knew with courage it could be shaped in their image. Insert you. Different theater, different time, different characters, different objectives all together, but same premise. A malleable world and an opportunity to shape it. So here is to finding the courage to shape your life. Never to dismiss or belittle your own small wins, for all big things are comprised of only small things, but rather to remember where you are now is not the final destination. It's one step on your own personal staircase that ascends to the heavens. Where you stop is a decision entirely yours. See, something beautiful happens when you set the standard so high that it hovers above the clouds. The obstacles along the way become far less intimidating, less significant. The story doesn't end down here, so there must be a way. And when we tell ourselves there must be a way, we simultaneously increase the odds of finding one. Right now is not the final boss, the coveted mountaintop. Right now is a small win that will help shape you into your evolved self. Right now is a mere challenge, an obstacle, a slight inconvenience, a story to tell, a data point as you etch into the ether your reality. As you dream larger than life and grow into those shoes, you could have played small. But then you woke up. You saw beyond the manufactured finish line that was turning molehills into mountains, and realized if you want it, this world is yours. And I say, let it be so. There's vulnerability that comes with risk. I'm not sure we can get the full extent of it from a book or a video. Rather, we only understand it once we experience it firsthand. Where you step further out into the world, a short distance beyond what was once the status quo, whatever that looked like for you. And suddenly you become susceptible to criticism and rejection.
You feel things you've never felt, see things you've never seen. Sometimes it feels like you're taking off your armor and marching directly into battle. And it makes sense in the beginning. But there is always a point during the heart of the storm where we look around and ask why. It's like a hangover, right? Where there's this internal tension, frustration, knowing that the whole thing was self-induced. You could be comfortable right now. Comfort was always an option, but you chose differently. And as you push through, something becomes evident. It takes time, but all things of value do. You realize that life is now offering you things previously unavailable. As though your ticket now permits you to relocate from the bleachers to courtside. The lock has come off the door. And immediately, you see why there was a cost associated with leveling up. After all, what is value if not scarce? If this were easy, what would it mean? If it were always accessible, where would the significance exist? If everyone could snap their fingers and arrive here, what would be special about it? What's remarkable is that it is reserved for the few willing to make the trip. And oh, the things we learn about ourselves along the way. In the book Unbroken, Hillenbrand tells the story of Louis Zamperini, a runner who went to fight in the Second World War. His plane is shot down. And almost the entirety of the book navigates the horrors he endures. Right? First being rescued in the Pacific, then tortured in Japanese POW camps, where he sees many around him die and even comes within inches of losing his own life on a handful of occasions. And when he's finally rescued at the end of the war, and I'll never forget this, he's asked about what he went through, and he says he'd rather die than go through it all again. And I'll tell you why that's so meaningful to me. Because it shows you what human beings can endure when we take things one day at a time, an almost unfathomable amount of pain and suffering and sacrifice. We are so strong and so powerful when we, as Louis did, take the battle day by day. And sure, looking at the horizon, it's an ocean to traverse. But broken down, merely droplets of water. Certainly manageable. Now, of course, we are not POWs, and I'm certainly not equating our adversity to his. But the reality is we are, in our own context, in our own ways, fighting our own battles. We're all navigating personal obstacles. And it's critical to know that one, you are capable, and two, the other side is worth it. We forget because it's easy to forget, because we are wired to avoid discomfort, because no one wakes up and intuitively thinks, man, I'd love to do the hard thing today. But what we learn is to love deeply is to take off the armor and allow the heart to be vulnerable. To seek out the adventure is to embrace the possibility of losing one's way. To dream of a place amongst the stars is to risk falling short and being reminded of our imperfections, our mortality. One might understand this and think only of the adversity, of what can go wrong, perhaps create lines in the sand that they refuse to cross. And sure, they play conservatively, their hearts won't be broken, their maps won't be necessary, their pride won't be crushed. But for what? What kind of existence is one where you never play the game because there was a possibility of defeat? We can all endure what is required to live fully. every single one of us. Yet so many will never leave the harbor because we struggle to see the journey as a collection of manageable pieces. You deserve more and you're capable of getting more. Don't deprive yourself of it. 1,000 heartbreaks is worth finding that someone who lights you up. And 1,000 miles in the wrong direction is worth uncovering that place you were meant to be. 1,000 swings and misses is worth finding your place amongst the stars. Vulnerability is not a burden, it's a staircase to the moon. Why not make today the beginning of your ascent?
Are we living or are we slowly dying? It's a question I recently came across and my mind said, hey, the second half of that is objectively true. We are slowly dying every day. Every morning we wake up, we are one day closer to the end of our time here. Our bodies, the air we are renting with every breath we take, all of it signifies how temporary and finite this journey. We are slowly dying. The question worth examining is, are we living? Emerson has a beautiful quote where he says, it's not the length of life, it's the depth of life. Meaning, it's not inconceivable that one could both have a pulse and sleepwalk through their entire existence. You can physically be present and still not totally understand the gift that is in the palm of your hand. And so, this is not a call for anything but for you to notice the choice, to notice what's at stake, to notice the fork in the road. In many ways, what happens out there comes down to those who notice and those who don't, those who see the opportunity and capitalize, and those who know not what they have. Remember, mistakes can be remedied. Most missteps are completely reversible, even the most tragic steps backwards. They're often a step forward as the dust settles and time plays its part. What's impossible to justify, though, is never going. Regret is a dead-end street. It gives you nothing to rectify or adjust or improve. You can't undo not going, not trying, never fighting for what you believed in. So perhaps this is what you need right now, where you are. The reminder to go out and stumble. Fall hard. And in the process, make your mark on the moment. On a world waiting for you to show it what you're capable of. See, because all that falling, day in and day out, when most were sleepwalking through life, it will have made you something they are not. Something they can never be. Unbreakable. Life can't break you. Only you can break you. You can't be both alive and avoiding the limelight. You can't be both in the arena and asleep. So open your eyes and go do what only you can do. Go be unbreakable. Because you've earned it. Unbreakable because you are resilient. Unbreakable because there is no fear of hitting the ground. No fear of the battles to fight or hills to climb. Unbreakable because breaking is quitting. It's stopping. It's refusing to take life in. And that's simply not you. In a world where outcomes are never guaranteed, we have to cling to what we can control. Heart, a willingness to fight, a commitment to live like few out there are willing to. So are you dying? Sure, we all are. But not today. Today is about, as Emerson said, the depth of life. Today is about capturing that fleeting moment. It's about reminding yourself and the world why you're here. I had a friend recently tell me consistency is more important than intensity. Interesting, I thought, right? Put it in my back pocket and moved on with my day. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how valuable those words are, how necessary. I think because typically my brain associates the acquisition of more with an increase in intensity. It's like you want more, okay, find a way to give more, to be better. That's the equation my brain was familiar with. And while not necessarily wrong, what it can do is diminish the power of showing up. It neglects the compound effect. The reality is that consistency over time becomes intensity. A snowball rolling downhill doesn't just increase in size, it increases in speed. Intensity is second to consistency because consistency creates intensity. Consistency is the material from which everything else is made. And we forget that. Thinking about how much bigger, better, stronger we'd like to be. Why can't I just leap a mile? Well, my friend, it turns out you don't have to. Miles are comprised of single steps. I wanted my run yesterday to be about 3/4 intensity. Decided the goal would be to land just under 8 minutes per mile. 7:59 would put me in a good spot for my plan for the week. But as happens, from time to time, the sun, the heat, my body weren't about it, right? And halfway through the run, I'm a little higher than I wanted to be, averaging about 8:01, 8:02 per mile, a little above my mark. And I thought to myself, you have to be better. You have to make a move right now. You have to find something in there. But did I? Did I have to find anything? Because it turns out I was right on track and didn't see it. What I needed to do was simply hold the 8-minute pace, 8:01. Just hold it. That keeps me in the game. Then we kick it up at the home stretch. And the last sprint will be enough to get my cumulative average down to 7:59 per mile. No miracles here. Forget the intensity. All the world is asking of me is consistency. Show up, step by step. Keep myself in the game. It's amazing that when you're hurting, the mind plays highlight reels of everything you lack, everything you're not doing, right? It's reaching. We get so uncomfortable or impatient that we think we need to perform magic tricks. And it's like, no, keep showing up. Keep yourself in line. The intensity is a derivative of the consistency, and it will make its presence known. So during those first 7 miles, I showed up, I committed, and I held on, right? Understanding the assignment, big picture. Thought only about consistency, staying calm, and then as planned, picked it up at the last mile, hit that goal. See, these little mental games are packed with value. They reinforce bigger picture truths. Show up, put in the work, find your rhythm, and hold. Don't stress yourself out looking at finish lines you have not yet crossed. Don't let the delta between where you are and where you want to be intimidate you. Right, that's precisely the reason people quit and walk away.
they get so caught up in where they are not that they forget little steps over time are what bring about change. They don't understand that the snowball is increasing in velocity as well as it rolls down the hill. That by staying focused, their output becomes the avalanche. So when you feel like the world is increased in size and its obstacles in number, know that there is value in holding the 8, the 801, the 802. Know the power of simply getting on base, of getting up again and again and again, of putting yourself in position to succeed. Because your time to sprint will arrive. And when it does, you'll be battle-tested and prepared. But the sprint only matters because you stayed steady, stayed consistent throughout, step, step, step. So remember when the rest of the world is talking about the shortcuts, the life hacks, and the secret solutions that will change your reality, they're missing the mark. Because one brick at a time, one step at a time, one day at a time, you're building something that can't be manufactured overnight. You're committing to the process and will ultimately experience that which can only be experienced by those who paid the price. Those who didn't panic or overanalyze, but put one foot in front of the other consistently, every single day.
This is your reminder that it's not permanent. Whatever it is you're going through, whatever it is you're fighting, feeling, or up against, it's not permanent. It will subside, and what you'll be left with is the calm and the peace and the power that was there the entire time, just underneath the surface, that never truly left. See, we tend to do something, and this something is the root of a lot of our struggle and pain. This something is, particularly in the moment, thinking that what we're going through now will last forever. It's the misconception that it's not a temporary battle, but a life sentence. We're incapable of looking beyond the immediate. And I'm here now to remind you it's temporary. It's all temporary. The question is not, will the storm pass? The question is, even though it hurts, can you, will you pick your head up and move through it? And I know in the storm, it's hard to see anything other than those gray skies, the thunder, the lightning, the black. I'm not asking you to blink and see some imaginary sunny day. I'm asking you to keep walking even though you feel like you can't. I know it hurts. I know it seems crazy. But I'm asking you to keep one foot in front of the other until once again you find yourself. Someone once told me success is often a matter of merely hanging on when most would be letting go. And that stuck with me. I think of it often because when I'm in pain, there comes with it an anxiety, almost a pressure to find solutions, to remove the problem. What if it doesn't go away? What if this chaos is now just life? But that quote reminds me that I don't have to pull a rabbit out of a hat or run into any miracles. I simply have to hold on. I have to believe in myself enough, trust in the process enough to not back down or hide or cower, but continually, like those buffalo are said to do, move right into the heart of the storm. And know that when all is said and done, only one of us will remain, and it won't be the storm. See, what you probably don't hear enough is the world needs you. Because of, sure, who you are now, but who you'll be on the other side. And so the question is, will you commit to pushing through? What you probably don't hear enough is people need you. Absolutely, because of who you are in this moment, but also because you're the type of person who overcomes the storm and finds a way through. My question remains the same. Will you find the courage to meet those on the other side? There's one true thing about all storms. They come and they go. And we often can't control when, why, where, or how long they exist. No, it's just sometimes life pulls the strings. But we can be sure that if we hold on and just keep going, remember our worth, there's a world that awaits. One maybe you can't see now, one that might not even make sense now, but a new world entirely. I once heard a speaker from a stage ask the audience if they want a $20 bill. Of course, everyone raises their hand. He crumples it up, says, "Now who wants it?" Everyone's hands still raised. He then proceeds, "What if I do this?" Drops it on the ground, stomps on it. Picks it up, shows the crowd. $20 bills in a ball, all dirty. Anyone still want it? All hands remained up. See, it doesn't matter what he did to the money. Value stayed the same. It's worth $20. And many times in our lives, he goes on to say, we do bad things or in bad situations, bad circumstances, we feel like we have no worth. But like that $20 bill, we never lose that value. That value exists when you are in pain. That calm exists underneath the turbulence. That sun lives beyond the clouds. It's never gone or diminished because of one's current state. When all you see is what's not there, it's not because you're alone or that you've somehow diminished in value. It's because you're pushing through your story just as I'm pushing through mine. It's because you're seeing a crumpled up $20 bill and not its worth, not the true impact that exists and that awaits. So whatever you do, keep pushing. Keep going. Keep looking for the other side. Whether you can see it now or not, it is waiting for you. And hopefully, innately, you understand that. Not because life as you hoped or wanted was returned to you, but because just like your worth, it was there the whole time. The most important promises are the ones you make to yourself. Of all the people on planet Earth, it's most critical that you believe you. That when you commit, you show up. When you make plans, you follow through.
when you tell yourself you'll do something, you actually do it. Here's what's interesting. Being that this is, I believe, the North Star, I'm consistently chasing down this standard, right? Trying to be better and better and better at following through. As I clearly think we all should, but keeping promises to yourself is different than keeping promises to others. When you let other people down, especially those close to you, you feel the social repercussions. And for human beings, negative social repercussions are painful. We care greatly about our reputation. Don't want to let others down. Don't want to be known as the person who doesn't show up. And that's incentive enough to push us towards following through with others. But with yourself, where do the repercussions go? What are the consequences? You tell yourself, today is the day. I'm starting, beginning, trying something new. And then you don't. There's no phone call with someone on the other end saying, hey, where were you? Hey, you promised. Hey, you owed me this. No, when we break promises to ourselves, it seems like the situation, after maybe a second or two of disappointment, just floats away into the ether. It feels as though there is no substantial cost. But I actually think those broken promises stick around. I think we wear them. We feel them. We see them when we look in the mirror. And sure, maybe there isn't that friend or family member staring us down with disappointment in their eyes. But how we see ourselves changes. Every broken promise to yourself reinforces the idea that not having high standards is okay. Every time we let ourselves down, it supports a narrative that being let down is normal, par for the course. If you don't show up for you, it begs the question, why should others show up for you? Why should others follow through when you wouldn't even do it for yourself? I've always believed that so many facets of life start internally and are projected out. How you see yourself, treat yourself, is the sun around which all that other stuff revolves, right? Like the world will notice and act accordingly. It will conform to the standards you create for you. So let's work on those standards. Let's make it so there's skin in the game. So that when we break promises to ourselves, say, not today, or this is good enough for now, that we understand the magnitude of those decisions. Because they're not insignificant. They're crucial. And sometimes we have to highlight the consequences of what we don't do. Sometimes we have to make ourselves truly feel the opportunities we let slip away. As though we did actually hold them in the palms of our hands. There is a price to letting yourself down, and perhaps there's power in quantifying it. There's an idea that, life isn't really you versus anyone or anything else. It's you versus you. And just like you would never let a stranger talk down to you or tear you apart, why would it be okay for you to talk that way to yourself? Right? Like if a friend says he's going to meet you for coffee at 7 a.m. every morning and never shows up, in what world would you keep driving there, sitting down, waiting, brushing it off, and rinse, repeat? Of course not. You'd look around and go, this is crazy, I don't deserve this, I'm better than this. Your defenses would kick in, you'd make adjustments. And just as you shouldn't tolerate it from someone else, you shouldn't tolerate it from yourself, because you're better than that. growth is a game of 1, identifying what's important, 2, creating small steps that move you in that direction, and 3, following through on those steps. Right? That's the formula. Being there for yourself when you fall. Hey, get back up, right? Falling is an indicator of progress, courage, and strength. Being there for yourself when you don't want to. Hey, I know you're tired. I know this doesn't seem fun right now, but you committed, and think about how good it's going to feel when you're done. Being there for yourself when you know there's more in you, but that voice in your head is tempting you to pack it all in or call it a day. Hey, it doesn't matter what that voice in your head says. There is no negotiating. You already made up your mind. See, there's power in simplicity. Find a target, aim, shoot. And although life is turbulent, there are certainly highs and lows. We are at our best when we decide what's important, initiate the journey, and show up. When I set the alarm clock, it can't be about rationalizing sleep. That beeping can't be about X many hours. No, it merely signifies a promise. It cries out, hey, remember what you said right before you closed your eyes last night? Well, time to bring that to life. So sure, that means be careful of the promises you make to yourself. Don't take them lightly. But once they are etched into the universe, they must be law. And I'm not talking about failure to adapt or try things. I'm not talking about being stubborn. I'm talking about the initial follow-through that precedes all that. Will we do what we said we would do? And I'm not emphasizing, making this the standard because life should be some perpetual boot camp. But rather because discipline is freedom. Because when we go to bed at night knowing we set goals and meet them, we see ourselves as winners. People follow through on who they believe themselves to be. It's an endless feedback loop. You see yourself as a winner, you carry yourself as a winner. You carry yourself as a winner, and other people see it. They treat you as such, and around it goes. So when you feel like skipping or procrastinating or quitting on yourself, remember that it's not just that immediate moment at stake. It's not a little thing. It's one brushstroke on the mural that is your current reality. It becomes you. And again, you wouldn't let other people talk down to you. So stop doing it to yourself. You wouldn't allow being stood up by others. So stop doing that to yourself. Become the king or queen of your own empire. Rule over yourself like it all matters, because it does. To keep the promises you make to yourself is playing offense. It's essentially building a bridge to the outside world so that you may go shape it, as opposed to merely putting up your hands and living at life's mercy. Never forget how much control you have, how powerful you are, and that you don't need to convince others, you need to convince yourself. During the highs, the lows, the ups and the downs, the sun and the rain, you need to be there for you. When something must be done, pick up your head, roll up your sleeves, and attack it. Why? Well, to put it simply, your future self will thank you. There's a powerful anecdote about adversity that deals with cows
and buffalo. And what's the difference? Picture the cows out grazing in a field. A storm is approaching. They hear it. They see the gray clouds moving in. What the cows will attempt to do is run away from the storm. Now, obviously, cows cannot outrun a storm. It inevitably catches up to them, and because they're trying to run away and everything's moving in the same direction, the cows end up being in the storm longer than they would have if they simply stayed put. The buffalo, on the other hand, approach it differently. They hear the storm, they see those clouds coming, and what they will do is run directly into it. They'll attack it, and sure, they get the chaos and the wind, and they find themselves in the storm's center with the turbulence. But also, because of this initiative, it's gone sooner. It passes them sooner, leaving a very relevant and important message for life. You never win running away from what must be done. You can't escape the turbulence. It has to be approached and attacked. In a way, it's the perfect metaphor for taking on life's problems. Not waiting them out, or even worse, running away, but going at it with everything you have. Because only then is the issue resolved. Things, as much as I wish it weren't true, generally just don't go away. And if you want to empower yourself, if you want to capture meaning in an often perceived to be meaningless world, own the situation. When others would run away, let's run in. When others rely on hope, let's be the ones who seek out solutions. I remember years ago now, Jocko Willink answering a question on procrastination, and he said something along the lines of, when you train your brain to attack the outstanding items in your life, you win. When you know you have to, but don't want to, that's when you must. Not even because it's more virtuous, but because it's practical. Because it turns the reason most people falter into the reason you will win. That storm, those clouds, that chaos, believe it or not, is all working for you. It's an opportunity to rise up and collect your win. Find your strength, empower yourself. It's moving directly against the crowd. It's swimming upstream, making a statement. If confidence is earned, then my friends, it is earned when the skies are dark. It's earned when the sun is gone. It's earned when every impulse says run, hide, save it for later. If you can stand up then, in those moments, you move beyond being a victim of the storm or even a survivor of the storm. No, you become greater than the storm. You become truly unstoppable. Not because you did anything far-fetched or out of this world, but because when most ran out, you ran in. You picked up your head. You rolled up your sleeves and took it head on. And that's the courage that your future self will thank you for. That's the decision that means everything.
Life is perspective. So during the good times, find gratitude. And during the difficult times, find the opportunity. When you have the answers, when you know, be proud of your knowledge. And when you don't, celebrate all the wisdom to come. When the sun is shining, cherish the warmth on your skin, and when it's not, learn to run in the rain. When you're focused, appreciate the clarity. And when life feels chaotic, embrace the chance to manufacture order. When people come into your life, value the ride that you'll share. And when they leave, take note of all they gave along the way. When you win, reflect back on all the hard work that made it possible. And when you lose, take in the lessons that even winning can't provide. When things go as planned, revel in your ability to execute. But when your plans and life's plans diverge, remember that some things are simply outside of your control. And now, this moment, is a chance to identify and utilize the things that are in your control. Henry David Thoreau, it's not what you look at, it's what you see. So see the world as you'd like it to be. Never turning a blind eye to reality, but realizing how much control you have over making reality your own. We are the builders. The world around us merely provides the components and the pieces. And if one were to live as though there were value in every moment, they would inevitably find themselves looking for that value, perhaps even when it was difficult to find, most elusive, when most would hang their heads and walk right by it. I look out my window and see a world that is neither valuable or valueless. I see a blank canvas in which we are tasked with making that decision. Life is a roller coaster ride. It has ups and downs, the obvious and the unexpected. And while some think nothing of the high points and dwell on the low points, there are an abundance of resources, of beauty, of joy, reserved for those who understand how great the highs are and how valuable the lows. Who take what comes, not as walls to live within, but as parts to assemble. Not as antithetical to their hopes and dreams, but as the very foundation they will build those hopes and dreams upon. This world is not for you, just as much as it is entirely yours. It calls for you to be that arbiter. For what you decide will inevitably take shape.
The other day, a good friend of mine sent me a message that was exactly what I needed to hear, exactly when I needed to hear it. And more or less, it's a paraphrasing of a quote that says, if you're going to be creative, you have to be in a state of play. And you can't be in a state of play if you're fearful, if you're worried about messing up or making mistakes. Here's something interesting I've observed. In order to build something, you have to be creative. In a way, intentionally reckless. You have to take risks and put yourself out there. And then hopefully, after some time living this way, the milestones begin to accumulate. But, and this is the shift I've noticed in myself, the more you accomplish, or the closer you get to that goal, the more your brain wants to transition from creative to protector. from being bold to conserving. We want to hold on to what we've brought to life more than we want to innovate. It's protect the castle on the hill that was, ironically, born of your creativity to begin with. And I know this isn't the way I want to live. But nevertheless, it's true. It's an example of me finding myself fighting with my biological wiring. Hey, courage got you here. It waters the seed of growth. It brought forth transformation. Abandoning it is a spiritual death wish. Yet, if I let myself run on default mode, and I know a lot of us are the same, courage just so happens to be the very first thing to go. And so the question reverts back to, if you really want more of the excitement, more of the growth, the beauty in conquering life's obstacles, the meaning in diving headfirst into chaos so that it can be tamed and channeled, how do we place ourselves back into that state of play? That perpetual state of play. Back before I started my own business, I was working in the corporate world, creating onboarding curriculums for new hires in the insurance industry. I would explain to kids out of college the basic ins and outs of the industry and why it was relevant. And one of the key ideas was risk mitigation. That's what insurance is, right? It's diversification of risk. I even think about it now. When I see my cell phone, close to the edge of a countertop, my brain goes, no. And I go to pick it up, place it to the center of the table or in my pocket, where the likelihood of a $1,500 device falling and exploding on the kitchen floor is greatly reduced. And that's a good thing. Time and place, for sure. But in our personal lives, it also happens that the beauty, the fun, the excitement, and the growth takes place on the counter's edge. It is dancing through life's fringes that we find ourselves. There's some truth to the idea that, hey, we might fall from the countertop and crash onto the floor, and you know what? Fine. Be at peace with that possibility. It's not a call for recklessness, but a reminder that a life fully lived is inherently more risky than one where you are safe. See, life is a game of trade-offs. Innovation comes from play. Play is not safe because there is a largely increased likelihood of mistakes. There's freedom, there's exploration. It's removing the guardrails and immersing yourself into life. And if you feel stuck, or that life has become mundane, perhaps it's because risk mitigation has taken the wheel and play has found itself in the back seat. Maybe it's that simple. Maybe it's time to step outside and live again. To remember that play brings with it its mistakes, sure. But contrary to what our lizard brains want us to think, most mistakes are reversible. And using that same little metaphor, one's phone falling onto the floor and shattering doesn't mean a person can never make a call, send a text, or use social media again, right? It's a temporary inconvenience in the grand scheme of things until they normalize. I think we want to live in a manner that makes possible the upside, not one that hides us away and reduces the potential downside. Again, the quote, if you're going to be creative, you have to be in a state of play, and you can't be in a state of play if you're being careful, if you're trying not to make mistakes. So take some time and think. Ask the questions that, if you don't ask yourself, will very likely go unanswered forever. What does play mean to you? What does it look like? And is it time for you to step back into that feeling? You being here alive today comes with odds said to be 1 in 400 trillion. Essentially impossible. If you want to look around for miracles, look no further than the mirror. And so don't lock yourself away until that ride expires. Don't spend your time protecting mediocrity. Step outside and cash in that check. Invite the play, the uncertainty, the mistakes, and the growth. Because as far as I know, there is no situation where one regrets inviting into their soul more of life.
There's a haze that circles around our most important moments. And I say haze because often the things that will be most meaningful in our lives, or that will best position us for future transformation or success, they don't accurately depict the value that they ultimately provide. In fact, a lot of the time we get the opposite impression. The answer is deceptively masked as the problem, the thing we are most inclined to run away from. It's often unclear to us that the pain we're experiencing will become the purpose. The loss will become the strength. We can't always see that losing the job will become our reason to find ourselves and the work that will be most meaningful. We don't always understand that losing someone that was a big part of our lives will ultimately create a little space that will bring about connection with others who will lift us up and make us better. We aren't always aware that falling short is incredibly powerful, because it's what most often prompts us to look in the mirror and ask that magical question, how can I be better? Again, we see it in a million different ways, different contexts. The solutions masquerade as problems. Or as has been famously put, the way often presents itself as the obstacle. Which means we have to operate with a sense of awareness and understanding that often eludes us. Sometimes the reality is that it hurts to let go. But if it's not right for you, it hurts to hold on as well. The difference is, when you do find the strength to let go, you simultaneously create space for the things that will make your life better. And I've noticed, as I've navigated this crazy place well into my 30s, that the discomfort I've experienced in the past, it rarely utilizes my future as its benchmark, right? When I'm uncomfortable, it's because something has gone awry in the now. This moment hurts. In this moment, I feel less than. In this moment, I feel lost. In this moment, I am X, Y, or Z. It's all generally immediate, emotive responses to what's happening. Which is why I advocate so strongly for pausing, pulling back, taking a breath, and assessing the whole picture in totality. See, I've made decisions in my life that have set me back a year, right? That destroyed me emotionally, totally altered my plans. And I look back on some of those decisions now, with all the pain they brought, and I think, was there another way? Did I make the right move? Did I need to endure all that? And I'm not going to pretend, I know how some parallel universe would have unfolded if I acted differently. But as I reflect back, I still think that I made the right choice. I don't see another way. Sometimes there are no easy decisions. Sometimes life is about choosing the least bad option. I've talked about having to step back in order to leap forward, or stepping sideways in order to ultimately advance. Sometimes the thing we need just looks like discomfort, the sheep in wolves' clothing, where you have to seek out monsters in order to destroy the ones that live inside of you. The reason, one, I think this is so important, and two, I'm so passionate about sharing it with others is because, again, our instincts drive us away from the things we need most. That's just how it is. Humans are more emotional than we are rational. And there have been plenty of times where, just being reminded, Eddie, I get that this is challenging, but where do you most want to go? Eddie, you're playing defensive, which I'm sure minimizes problems now, but will never propel you forward with your career. Eddie, you're dragging your feet and calling it perfectionism. Could it in fact be fear? Right? I've had a lot of these little, and sometimes not so little, epiphanies over the course of the last decade. When people ask me about speaking, which being that I do it for a living would make sense, right? Tips or insights, whatever it is, I'm being completely sincere when I say that I wish I had some formula I could propose, right? That would make you go from 0 to 60 in 3 months. But the truth is, the biggest bang for your buck is stepping right into the terror. The thing you're most inclined to run from. And that was it for me, right? Sheer terror, actually shaking. Nights where I stayed awake, reciting keynotes into hotel mirrors. Couldn't eat. And I'd, wrap up, the event would be over, I'd just go back to the room and collapse in bed because I hadn't slept the night before, right? That's how it started. And the more times I didn't give myself a way out, the more I saw past the fear, put emotions aside, and reiterated to myself that underneath all that discomfort was value, the better I became. The less dramatic each speaking engagement became. And the terror evolved into excitement. Eddie, please get through this, eventually evolved into, Eddie, how can you make this speaking engagement more exciting, more fun, more captivating than the last one? Right? I recently spoke at the MGM Grand Arena, and it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. And I'm sure you can imagine, not necessarily because of the event, but it prompted me to think back to all those times I wanted to say no so badly, with all my heart, with every fiber of my being, but didn't. It was just a proud feeling. Like you get those moments from time to time where everything becomes a single snapshot. It all makes sense. Right? Because there were times I truly didn't understand why I was moving forward. I just did. I just knew I'd burn the boats. There were no other options. And when you collect that W, you quickly remember. And so all this to emphasize the very important point that it may not be speaking at the MGM Grand Arena that's your North Star. Maybe it's something totally different. But I want to remind you that the road to wherever you most want to be is not perfectly paved and decorated with flowers. It won't always be sunny with clear blue skies. And to take it even further, the paths that are paved with flowers and clear blue skies are often the wrong ones. In a world of trade-offs, we know that the best things often require the greatest sacrifice. The beautiful things are often derived from a willingness to endure prior turbulence. And should you find yourself amidst all that, in the thick of it, it's essential to know that should you choose to do so, you can transform the chaos into something incredible. Realistically, that pain of loss we can't do anything about, right? Nature has made it so that we feel every sense of what's been taken away. But nature doesn't do such a good job of reminding us of the infinite value that can now move into our souls, be used to open our eyes so that we may see the world as we've never seen it before. There is such power in the ability to view that fleeting emotion, the discomfort of now, in terms of what it will ultimately become. As the saying goes, the hardest thing and the right thing are often the same thing. So be your own judge, your own critic. Decide what best points you to that place amongst the stars you long to be. Just understand that the road won't be pain-free, and those who try to make it so miss out on a lot of the brilliance available to us. That haze that tries to conceal what's most important is only effective if we keep our eyes closed, if we aren't honest with ourselves. But if you know, one, what's most important, and two, are committed to one day arriving there, the short-term obstacles become a relatively small price to pay. There's always something that can be done. Sometimes that something is micro. It's the smallest step in the right direction. And sometimes that thing is macro. It's massive action. It's picking up and leaving when you know the time is past due. Or it's headed towards something beautiful that's calling your name. But every so often, the thing that must be done is the most challenging of all. Nothing. It's understanding the difference between motion for the sake of motion and actual progress. As the Stoics preached, and the Serenity Prayer states, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, sometimes understanding that something is outside the scope of your control is both the most challenging and the most necessary. After all, kicking and screaming won't change the weather. Emptying every penny you have into the fountain won't make someone more honest, trustworthy, or reliable. No, those wishes get lost in the ether, right? Crossed fingers may give you hope, but they don't change the world as it currently exists. I remember a few years ago now having a conversation with author Bronnie Ware, and her saying perhaps the most important thing she's discovered over the years was the power of surrender. Surrender, younger me thought. With my tightly packed schedule and perpetually rising levels of cortisol, you've got to be kidding me. Life's too short for surrender. Well, a few years later, I'm realizing that perhaps I was correct and incorrect. Correct that life is too short to go all in on the wrong thing. Incorrect that the wrong things were a peaceful mind and an ability to accept certain reality is beyond us. Acceptance doesn't make you powerless. No, it makes you more powerful. Because once you accept the things that cannot be changed, you can finally quit the whole Sisyphus and the boulder routine and focus on the things that actually light up your life. When we focus on that which is worthy of our focus, we become superhuman.
I can't say for sure, but I'd like to imagine the Michael Jordans of the world surrender. They surrender to the location of the game. They surrender to who the audience might be. They surrender to who will be opposing them come game time. They surrender to the weather, the lights, the time, the day, which allows them to focus only on scoring more in 48 minutes than the team they are playing against. Doing that well and consistently greatly diminishes the significance of all those other variables. Surrender is everything because it creates space for what matters most. Tom Brady didn't sit there all day refreshing the weather app before his games in Buffalo. He knew he couldn't control the weather, but he could control the game plan, and so he readied himself and his team accordingly. I say this as someone who often feels inclined to refresh that metaphorical weather app in my own life, as though paying attention to mundane things outside of my control will alter my fortune or the outcome. Look, there's so much we can control. We are so powerful. Why let the trivial get in the way of our strength? Why invite adversaries into our precious headspace when they do not belong? You very likely can't change the people around you. You, however, have control over how you internalize and respond to their behavior. You can't change your DNA or your biological makeup, but you can very much control how you'll get the most with what you have. Surrender to that which is beyond you. Accept it. Appreciate it even. Because once you do this, you will finally be free. Free to grow the things that are yours, the things within your control, of which there are many.
What if I fall? The man asks, looking nervously over the edge. Oh, but my friend, a voice responds back. What if you fly? A little quote I heard not too long ago demonstrating our proclivity to maintain, to preserve, to protect, to move away altogether from the risk, for fear that we might lose our grip on the status quo. Completely forgetting to think about what life could become if things worked out. Forgetting that life is a game of trade-offs. And to fixate on never losing what you have means forfeiting the possibility. It is that simple. To stay is a refusal to go. We need to constantly reinforce the idea, the truth, that what we aren't doing is a decision. And while we place our energy and efforts on minimizing the falling and the failure, someone else is stepping into it. They're capitalizing on it, falling again and again and again until they can fly. Because the danger is not in falling, it's in never taking to the sky. It's becoming only a fraction of the person you are capable of becoming, with the required sacrifice and courage. It's an understanding that we're not wrong for initially thinking small, playing to not lose, thinking only to protect. That's how human beings arrive out of the factory, right? Stock. And you can thank millennia of evolution for that. You're not weak for being scared. You're not less than for shaking when you stand face to face with the adversity of life. Again, this is what being human is. But what we also possess is the ability to understand these default limitations and transform them. To understand being scared of the world around us was incredibly valuable forever ago, right? When we roamed around hunting and gathering, it made sense not to inquire further when there was a shaking in the bushes. It made sense not to rashly run into the cave. It made sense to fear deeply the prospect of being abandoned by your small tribe that was the only reassurance separating you from the vast unknown lurking in the darkness, the wilderness. But anyone listening to this today must also understand that these biological drivers are outdated. The lions in the bushes are no more. The caves are generally metaphorical, and one's quote-unquote tribe should be carefully and methodically chosen, right? Civilization provides that cushion, and what a luxury. So when life pushes back, and it will, and you feel like you're on that ledge, you will want to turn back. Not because you're weak, but because you've forgotten that the voice in your head screaming in fear can't see the upside. It's blind to the possibility. It only sees downside. It only says, hey, this might bring about discomfort. There are things out there you don't know, foreign entities, possibly adversaries. Why would you even contemplate taking that leap? And that's where you step in and provide reassurance. Yeah, things could go wrong, but the wrong steps are, one, usually reversible, and two, provide the wisdom that I need. It gives you a chance to inject into the conversation that if things go right, your life changes. That this could be the beginning, and that we don't live until the excitement about what life can become if things work out is greater than the fear of what life would regress into if they didn't. Without upside, there's no hope. Without hope, there is no purpose. And as Viktor Frankl has said, life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. We're all operating within the same parameters, same playing field. But the difference is we have different soundtracks, interpretations, and narratives playing behind our eyes. He may see the world collapsing and spend the rest of his life mourning what is gone, while she may see the same devastation and bring herself to wonder, well, what can I build in its place? What can arise from the wreckage? Same circumstance, different storyline, different result. I often cringe when I hear mindset misinterpreted as this magical thing that becomes reality the second you close your eyes and make a wish. Like the law of attraction, as far as I'm concerned, is not magic. I think this whole song and dance is much simpler than that. We act in accordance to the things we believe. And if you believe you're not good enough, if you believe you're not worthy, if you believe more is out of the question, what incentive do you have to change? None. It's much easier to default to hating the world when that's your perspective. But when you can find the discipline, even for a moment, to pause and ask, well, what if things got better? What if my life could be more? That spark has suddenly given you a reason to take another step forward. It's made an argument as to why that discomfort just might be worth it. The magic isn't that you wished for it and so it was. The magic is that you saw it as a possibility, and in doing so incentivized yourself to move towards that outcome. It's hard to gravitate towards something that has not yet been built. It's hard to stand with conviction in defense of a life that hasn't yet materialized. But that, my friends, is the beauty and mystery of life. You don't get what you want until you start living like you already have it. Like you can touch it, taste it, like it's real. So when the journey feels impossible, know that you are on the right track. You're competing against some very formidable adversaries, your very DNA. You're competing against the people around you that don't understand. You're competing against the obstacles that make you question whether that conjured up castle in the air, existing only in your head, could ever come to fruition. That is some resistance. But as you step forward into the haze, your single, solitary acts of courage will begin to tell a story, to take shape. The once make-believe will become tangible. You'll see the pieces coming together, and you'll see yourself as the one capable of assembling them. An architect of sorts, a designer, one with courage and self-belief. The truth is, you will never completely mitigate fear. That will be with you forever. It's par for the course. You just need to remember that the power of purpose, of meaning, the value of upside and opportunity is greater than that nagging voice of fear. It's not about closing your eyes to who you are or where you've been. There's beauty in all that. It's merely about opening them to all you can become.
Nine things you do have control over that will make your life better. This is, I think, one of the most important conversations to have, simply because so much energy is placed on stuff that's beyond us, right? That we have no control over, yet we ignore the strength within us, the things that will actually transform our lives and push us forward. Stoicism obviously places a lot of emphasis on differentiating between these two things. Like letting go of what's not ours and, really cultivating and strengthening what is. And there's plenty of iterations. One of my favorites and one of the most common, most well-known is the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's that idea that you have within you a superpower, but you have to stop looking outside, right, and pointing at the sky for stuff that's just not yours, right? So let's dive right into it. That's where the power is. 9 things you can control that will change your life. The first, and this is not going to be a surprise, mindset. Why? Because it doesn't matter if the sky's falling or the walls are crashing down. How you think is yours. It's your strength. And no one said it better in my mind than Viktor Frankl, where he says, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And when you understand the context, and this is a man who went through one of the grossest atrocities in human history, the concentration camps during World War II, and clung on to hope, right? Left that situation saying, hey, no one can take your outlook from you. It doesn't matter how bad the world seems. That is one of the most empowering things I've ever heard. And when I look back at my life, and I'm sure a lot of you watching can relate, some of the darkest times ended up bringing me to the most beautiful places. And going through them in those moments, the ability to pause and just say, hey, I know this sucks. I know it doesn't feel good, but there's value here. right? Not intuitive. It's not an intuitive thing to do, which is why I think it's more important. No matter what you're going through, there's something there that's meaningful and even beautiful that will ultimately be transformative. Your attitude is yours. Nothing can take that away. Number 2, you always have control over how you allocate your time. There's an idea that what you water grows, which presents a simple formula. Understanding what's important in your life and asking yourself, are you giving that the sufficient attention it deserves? I think an easy example that we all relate to is, people talking about financial freedom, wanting to be wealthier, wanting more money in the bank, right? But when you have a conversation, well, okay, how much is coming in every day? How much is going out? What are your goals? What are you spending your money on? All these somewhat basic questions, they don't know. It's like, well, you're not giving that the attention. You're not aware. You're not monitoring or studying that. I guarantee you, if you took a spotlight to those things, it would evolve in a way that changes your relationship with money and income in your bank account, right? So, simple example, but you get the idea. Where you focus is where you'll see results. So ask yourself, are you focusing on the right things? How can you be, more methodical about your time? Because again, that is always yours to control. Number 3 is the morning. And the morning is something I always have control over. We all do. And it's one of the most transformative periods of time because it's where you create your momentum, right? It carries into the rest of your day. When you go up, take care of yourself physically, right? For me, hopping in the cold plunge, sauna, coffee, journaling, planning out the rest of the day, it 10x's the momentum and excitement and just the feeling I get as I navigate, the day. And so for me, it's a no-brainer. W. Clement Stone, little hinges swing big doors. That to me is my little hinge. I can control that every single day. So it's something to think about. How are you starting your day? Are you just rolling into the chaos? Or are you being methodical? And, there's not a one-size-fits-all. You are your own experiment. But are you playing with that and looking at different ways to launch into a day that is, more productive, healthier, happier? Number 4 is gratitude. Very simple, right? It's one of the most important perspective shifts you can make. Because if you never think about what you have, what's in your life, who's in your life, how far you've come, you fall into this place of lack, right? You only see the gap. And there's more to life than that, right? When you understand how lucky you are and, how beautiful it is to be here and experience this, it makes the bumps and bruises along the way seem way less significant, right? So it's not just like a fluffy, hey, be grateful. There's a very pragmatic reason for it. Perspective. Life is innately hard. Okay, right? It arms you with the ability to handle that adversity because you're grounded and you have an incredible situation and you're in position to tackle whatever comes at you. Number 5 is your willingness to listen. You can always control how much you listen. This one might seem silly at first or not important at first, till you realize very few people are good listeners. And so much growth and understanding comes from listening, observing, right? It seems like we're wired to want to talk and share and, as my grandfather used to say, flap our gums, right? But if you can find the discipline to take life in and learn from it and hear what other people have to say, you're arming yourself with knowledge that you otherwise wouldn't have had. Number 6 is a commitment to education, constantly seeking knowledge in some capacity. And that doesn't have to be in the context of a third grader in a classroom, but what areas of your life are growing, right? There's a very simple idea that progress equals happiness. We are more content beings when we feel like we're in pursuit of something meaningful, whatever that is in your life. So don't push that aside and think that you're done learning. You're never done learning. There's always growth. There's always some value you can take in that's bringing you closer to somewhere you want to be, right? Life is a teacher, so don't forget to be a perpetual student. You can always control that. Number 7, I know a lot of you will relate to this, your circle. You are the sum of, what's the terminology, the 5 people you surround yourself with, or the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. Surround yourself with people who lift you up, who make you better, who are positive influences on your life, who push you to do more, who challenge you. Not folks that drain you and are negative and cripple your growth. Right? You can always control who you're around. And that, as it turns out, makes such a tremendous difference on your life outlook, how you look at yourself and how you look at the world. You can control your circle. Next, how you treat others. You can always control that. Are you compassionate? Are you empathetic? Again, do you listen? Do you seek to understand? These things matter. And, what goes around comes around. When you treat others well, not only do you feel better and pick up allies along the way, but that comes back to you. So it's something to constantly think about, be cognizant of. How are you treating those around you? And lastly, you have control over the goals that you set. Right? There's an idea that you cannot hit targets that aren't there. Yet so many of us kind of stumble around through life just hoping we'll end up somewhere that we're happy with. Most of the time, that's not how it works out. I heard Jim Rohn say this kind of tongue-in-cheek, and it stuck with me. He's like, there's never been a basketball team or a football team that took the court or the field that didn't have a game plan. And that's for 3 hours? Yet, some people live their entire lives without a plan. When you think about it in that context, it just doesn't make sense. Right? So when you set those goals, when you're aware of the targets you've created, you're much more inclined to make everything in your life fit under that tent, to be more methodical and strategic, and ultimately be where you want to be. That's what it's all about, right? You have that control. You just have to remember. So what goals are you setting? So there you have it, 9 things you can control that will change your life. I hope it gave you some much needed perspective, and I look forward to seeing you all thrive and flourish in whatever it is you're doing. See you next week. What makes human beings different from birds, cats, dogs, and chimps is that we understand the finitude of life. We get it, how temporary, how fleeting it all is. But we do, however, as we get caught up in the trivialities of our day-to-day, need to be reminded of that fact, that there is no forever in this world. Because sometimes we wait like we can afford to wait. We drag our feet like there will be a next time. There are no next times. For me, especially when it came to doing the things I knew I needed to do, but was worried about or nervous to begin, I had to adjust my mindset. I had to learn to see missed opportunities as tangible, as though they're real. And that's the hard part, right? It's easy to dismiss something that never happened. Oh, I didn't go. End of thought, end of story. It's easy to rationalize that as insignificant. How could something you didn't do be important? But when you view what you need to do or where you want to go as an already existing path, then to not walk down that path is very real. It's a decision. The next question is, well, what if I'm not ready to walk down that path? I'd catch myself thinking that all the time, right? Well, here's the deal. For the big things in life, we simply never feel ready.
There is no fully prepared. There will never be a fully prepared. Because we learn as we go. How could we know all there is to know and understand all there is to understand when the path is the teacher? It's like expecting a seed to grow without ever having planted it. Life is about being in motion, letting the world shape you. It's less about being handed a map as it is about being the Lewis and Clark of your own story. Understanding that what awaits is intimidating, it's unknown, sometimes terrifying, but simultaneously, the adventure. That thing in your heart and your soul that pulls at you, that asks you to be a little bolder, a little stronger, asks you to unshackle yourself from the worry and begin your pursuit. That is your frontier. And sure, some will simply watch that clock tick away. They'll never set out on the journey. They'll stay where they are, citing the difficulty, maybe the irrationality of that which they don't know. It's all crazy, right? They'll say. They'll spend their days a little safer every step, a little more predictable, but they'll also never truly see the show. They won't understand how beautiful those views are and how the darkness of those valleys become our strength. Time should have been their reason to go, and instead, it was the story that never came to be. Like Jim Rohn has alluded to, you think going is expensive. Wait until you see the cost of not going, of not trying, of not walking down the path that will unlock your mind and change the way you see the world. You know what that is for you. Let's be honest, we all do. It's not about answers, it's about commitment to willfully embrace that which we do not understand. We don't get how those pieces stack up. But it's about letting yourself be the student and life the teacher. This, I believe, when our finite time is up on this rock rotating around the sun, will be what makes us smile, makes it all worth it. The memories we made, the adventure, the times we thought we were done but somehow kept moving, thought we'd lost but somehow found a way. That's our power. And if we're the authors of our own stories, the only thing truly unimaginable is the refusal to pick up that pen and open the book. Don't deprive yourself of the opportunity to explore the depths of your imagination. Don't hide from your greatness. Don't let what could go wrong cheat you out of all that can go right. As the saying goes, you only live once, but if you live it right, once is enough. So don't stay because of the clock, go because of the clock, live because of the clock. Its hands are pointing you to that place you most need.